China Report.
Just a question. Do you believe that a well-run military is important for international relations, particularly in Canada's case when it comes to supporting the United Nations missions abroad?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
This is related to Canada and China relations.
Just a minute, I'm going to stop the clock. Mr. Janis, do you have a point of order?
Thank you. Ms. Zahn is telling me it's relevant to the work of the committee.
It's very relevant.
I haven't even yet stated what my point of order is about. Mr. Chair, I will note that Liberal members of the Defence Committee voted to shut down an inquiry into the appointment of General Vance. So it's interesting that they shut down the inquiry at the Defence Committee, and now they're trying to bring it up at the Canada-China Committee on an unrelated topic. If Liberals want to adjudicate this issue, perhaps they will support reopening the investigation at the Defence Committee.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Ms. Zahn, when someone is raising a point of order, you have to wait until you're recognized by the chair, okay? Now, I'm not sure I heard Mr. Janis in terms of what his point of order is particularly. I mean, I think I know where he's going. I heard that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was about relevance, but I was trying to be constructive and give the Liberals an opportunity to adjudicate these same issues at another committee where they had previously shut down the study of this very issue.
Thank you, Mr. Janis. So we are studying the national security aspects of the relationship between Canada and China, and I would, while of course members have a pretty broad leeway, I would ask them to try to bring their questions within that context. Ms. Zahn, you have about 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you know, this is extremely important. Canadians deserve to know what exactly each witness is bringing to the committee, and that includes their experience and any bias. And it would seem to me that my Conservative colleague is making me think that perhaps they're worried about the questioning and where it's leading, especially since Erin O'Toole was on the cabinet.
Bring it up at the Defence Committee.
Order.
I'm not in the Defence Committee.
There seems to be a confusion between...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lee, what kind of information about your ongoing operations do you provide to entities in China?
Pardon, well, could you repeat your question?
What kind of information about your operations do you provide to entities in China?
This institute is as a part of Carleton, it's like many other institute and center. So one of many in Carleton. So it is under Carleton's policy and procedures. So the other centers and institute, like they focus on different parts of the world, like the Indian Center, and this institute focus only on language training.
Sorry, Mr. Lee, if my question wasn't clear, but let me ask it again. What kind of information about your ongoing operations do you provide to entities in China? Are you reporting back?
We don't report anything to China. I report only to Canada, to Carleton University.
You provide no information on your operations, on numbers, on programming?
We don't report. I'm an employee of Carleton. I don't report to anyone else except Carleton.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to identify as well that this committee does have the power to send for documents, and that's something we may choose to do following testimony this evening. Mr. Lee, in the interest of promoting understanding, would you recommend that Carleton University invite the Dalai Lama to come to campus? And if the Dalai Lama were to visit Carleton University and you were invited to attend a reception welcoming him, would you choose to attend?
I'm not in a position to answer this question. I don't take any kind of assumption.
Pardon me?
So I am not in a position to answer this question. I don't have the knowledge, and I cannot take a question on a kind of assumption.
I'm not sure what kind of knowledge you're talking about here. You're unfamiliar with the Dalai Lama, or I mean, if the university was considering inviting this fairly well-known person, you mentioned the center's mandate is to promote understanding and exchanges and dialogue. What would your recommendation be with respect to an invitation like that?
I would make my decision when the time comes, and I cannot make decision right now.
Okay. Do you believe that the government of China is failing to adhere to its international human rights obligations? And how are human rights abuses by the government of China discussed in the context of curricular materials or events hosted by the Confucius Institute at Carleton?
I'm not aware of any such allegation in the institute at Carleton University.
You're not aware that human rights...
Any kind of allegation in the institute at Carleton University.
Okay, I'm not talking about allegations against the institute, though. I'm asking if there is discussion about Chinese government human rights abuses that takes place in the Confucius Institute.
Well, I heard from news and read from news, but I haven't heard anything here at Carleton in this institute.
Okay, so as far as you know, there are not discussions taking place about human rights abuses in China at the Confucius Institute?
Not that I'm aware at this institute at Carleton University.
Okay. Where do you get your funding from? Various experts have said that you're funded by the CCP propaganda department affiliated with United Front and Works Department. Where does the funding that you get from China source from?
It is from the Confucius Institute head office. It's Confucius Institute in Beijing. That fund goes to the university finance account and managed complete under the university finance.
So you receive funding from the Confucius Institute head office in Beijing, but you're telling me that at the same time you don't provide any information back to them on how those funds are used?
Well, at the time they kind of asked how the fund is managed, and I told them it's managed by university finance. Then there's no more questions.
Who develops the curricular materials that you use? Are they developed by head office or are they developed by you locally?
Okay, let me answer this question. So we have visiting scholars from China. So they apply for they express their willingness to be the visiting scholars. So I collect their the application, identify as the candidates. When the Carleton requires the instructors, I give this candidate to our Carleton, the departments. So the department review their qualification, academic qualifications, and arrange interviews. So when the department faculty
sorry, Mr. Lee, the question is about curricular materials, not about visiting scholars.
Yeah, so it's because we have the visiting scholars from China and teaching the courses at Carleton at the School of Linguistic and Language Studies. It is the course of the linguistic language studies, and that they follow the Carleton policy of curriculum, Carleton content.
Okay, thank you, sir. One last question. Have you ever had visiting scholars visit from Taiwan? And do you consider Taiwan to be part of China for the purposes of your objectives of building connection and understanding?
We have not received, and from the Institute point part.
Thank you, Mr. Jennis. We'll now go on to Ms. Yip for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you for coming as witnesses during this late hour. My first question is to Ward, Mr. Elcock, pardon me. I noticed in your bio that you were the federal coordinator for the Olympics. And I'm just wondering how you feel about Canadian athletes participating in the upcoming Beijing Olympics.
Mr. Chairman, my view on the subject, frankly, is that the last time that as a country we decided not to participate in the Olympics, which was the boycott of the Olympics in the Soviet Union, was really not a success. It did nothing to further the point, and was frankly not a success. I think that should not be taken as a comment with respect to any of the concerns that are expressed about China and China's practices. But I'm not sure that the Olympics are necessarily the best venue for that, for those matters to be discussed. And I frankly don't think that a boycott of the Beijing Olympics will achieve anything.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, from 2007 to 2012, there were 15 Confucius Institutes opened across Canada. What led to their rapid enhancement at the time, and has there been any similar increases since then?
The Confucius Institute at Carleton started in operation in 2012, and I cannot speak for the other institute, really.
Aware of any of those incidents.
Okay.
I'm a social scientist. I'm not in engineering,
Okay.
so my research is not funded by Huawei and those politically, sensitive areas.
Fair enough. I got another question. You had an interesting point about an agnostic approach. That's an interesting concept, but how do you take that approach when you're dealing with a country like China, which is, it's the 800-pound gorilla. No other country in the world compares to it in terms of its size, its ideology, and at times even its aggressiveness.
Any informed and smart person, like everyone in this room would know the elephant in the room. But I think,
Okay.
being agnostic, we can, prevent a lot of finger pointing and then racial profiling.
And the red baiting. Okay, I see. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a quick question for Mr. Fadden. Mr. Fadden, you talked about is it the strategic adversary, which is kind of a nice sounding term. I know it's a hockey team, but then you mentioned an 8 out of 10. That's quite a high alert level. I assume a 10 is conflict. So is strategic adversary in fact the right term? Does that really convey the threat?
It's a good question. I mean, it's the term that I've sort of adopted, as have others. What it's trying to do from my perspective is to say that it's strategic in the sense that it's global. They're after us, if I can use the vernacular, from a whole variety of perspectives, and they're after us in a negative sort of way. That's all I meant by that. There probably is a better expression.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Don't forget to like, dislike, subscribe, and comment. Safe Space Cafe. And always, have a good day.